And yeah, I think that's what's so beautiful about not only about these suits, right, but also the character of Spider-Man himself. I think that the beauty of Spider-Man and what he means to me, and I'm like we're gonna transition there, it's gonna be it's a jarring transition, but we'll go with that, And yeah, I do think with Spider-Man, I think Spider-Man, like what he means to everyone and what he means to like me most of all was like, he was like the first character I've ever was introduced to. It was one of those guys that when I came home, my parents gave me one of those like Spider-Man toys. It was crazy. It was a crazy sight to see. I always destroyed my toys, so like one of my black Tobey Maguire figures, like it was missing a finger. I'm like, I don't know, how are you missing a finger, Tobey Maguire? But I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Tobey Maguire. If I want him to sign that thing so bad, but I'm like, I'm sorry, he's missing the finger. But I don't know, man. It's just I think what resonates with me the most with him as a kid was as a kid, I thought Spider-Man was the coolest thing ever because the brother could walk on walls. He could defy physics and defy human limitations. Yet the character has so much limitations to himself. The character Peter Parker sees every little boundary and almost crumbles to a degree because his life is so sad. It's depressing, but it's also uplifting to see that man push through the boulders, push through the weight of the world, and help balance that on his life. He's a guy who has the worst work-life balance I've ever seen in my life. But it's so refreshing to see a guy who does struggle, but he gets up anyway because he knows that if he doesn't get up for himself, other people won't get up for themselves either because he is a beacon of hope in a way that other heroes, like Superman and Batman, those guys are different in ways, different types of beacon of hope. Where I feel like Spider-Man is the everyman, right? Like, do you agree that like Spider-Man is probably possibly the most relatable character in fiction, or at least comic book fiction?
I absolutely do because as a kid, Spider-Man was also the first superhero I was introduced to as a kid. But it was an interesting way how I got introduced to Spider-Man. So I got introduced to Spider-Man because of a newspaper article clipping, which it was advertising for Spider-Man 2 back in 2004. And I remember that I was like, "What's that?" And so I was told who Spider-Man was. And the first thing that I wanted as a kid was the original Lego set from 2004, and it was the one that just got remade and re-released earlier this month of the famous train sequence or the subway sequence
Hmm.
where Tobey Maguire is just trying to hold the train back with the webbing. And that was the first thing that I wanted. I mean, I had the Spider-Man 3 action figures. I had the one where it was him riding on the quad. I don't know if you remember that one, but it was like him riding on a quad. And I was like, this is one of the coolest things ever. And the older that I got, I started realizing, he had some sort of like work balance that was terrible, but it gave me hope on my end on how if he was able to balance his academic life with his social life, with superhero life, with his personal family life, and still going through a lot, then I believe that any person at his age could be able to do the same thing. That's what got me through high school, and I started rewatching Spider-Man again after my grandmother passed away, and I realized, there's a lot more to Spider-Man than I thought them from before. Because I mean, he lost his parents, he lost Uncle Ben, and in this version, he lost Aunt May, and he's even lost Tony Stark. So he's lost like his actual father, two father figures, one of his mentors, and then his aunt, who's the second mother figure to him. And the other crazy thing is that throughout this whole entire thing, he also loses a lot more. Like, he loses MJ, he loses Ned for the temporary a moment amount of time. He loses Doctor Strange, he loses practically everybody, because they're not going to remember him for a while. And hopefully, Spider-Man Brand New Day does address to how they could be able to remember him somehow. I really want them to, because I know that Zendaya and Jacob Batalon are back for Spider-Man Brand New Day, and I'm super happy that they are. And I saw earlier that Sadie Sink's now filming some of her scenes now, which is amazing. But what I personally love about Spider-Man is the fact that despite that he goes through so much, he's been through so much loss, he's been through so much pain, he still has this purpose that he feels like at some points he feels like, why do I even do this? And reminds us a lot about like why do we do the things that we do. But then once we get back up and we move forward from the mental and emotional distress points that we have, we then start to realize that even though that sometimes we might not be wanting to live for ourselves because of the situations that we're in, it doesn't mean that there aren't people who don't care about us, and that there's people who want us to keep going because they want to see us succeed. And Spider-Man's built up a reputation at this point to where people want to see him succeed. And because that Spider-Man Brand New Day is a 3-year gap from the ending of No Way Home to Brand New Day, I think that there's going to be something there that he's going to build up the reputation, and people are going to love him because he's the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man of New York. And people need a hero, especially they need somebody to look up to, and especially in a time like right now. I like how it's quoted in Into the Spider-Verse, when Miles is in that comic book shop, and he's like, I don't know, is this too big? And then do you have the Stan Lee cameo, which was one of the final ones that he had, and it says, kid, anybody could wear the suit. And technically, anybody can wear that suit. Any of us can be Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, Spider-People. Like, we have the power to be able to do so. And I think that's what makes Spider-Man one of the most iconic figures in comic book history, and one of the most iconic fictional characters of all time.
Yeah, I do absolutely agree with that, and I think Stan Lee, I'd like to add what you said about Stan Lee, because Stan Lee, I think he purposely made it where Spider-Man is fully clothed, he's fully masked up, you really can't tell who it is, based on, there's no facial recognition, there's no, body, exposed parts of him, because Spider-Man could be essentially anyone and anything, it gives everyone a chance to be a hero, to see themselves under a mask. It's for Tony Stark, we love Tony Stark, right? But no one's gonna be a billionaire. No one's gonna have the wits, the power to at least be an engineer in that way, Spider-Man is an engineer, but the brother's broke, so he has to work with what he got. He's crafty. He has to be smart with his resources, because those are the resources he can only fiend for. And I think that's what's wonderful about the character Spider-Man. He's a guy who puts one foot in front of the other every single day, not knowing what's in store for him in terms of what his life is gonna be in his web of lies and web of different flying pieces of crap that fly at his face every day during the job of being a Spider-Man and being the job of Peter Parker, And I think it's interesting when everyone thinks Peter Parker, right? When you think Spider-Man, you think Peter Parker, right? But then we have, thanks to Spider-Verse and the Spider-Verse films, we got different iterations of Spider-Man now. It's not just Peter Parker, even if we get Peter Parker. Every character goes through trials and tragedies, yet they somehow get back up one way or another and build their name, build their legacy through Spider-Man and branches out from. And I think it's what's wonderful about just about the animated Spider-Verse films, but the Spider-Man films in general, because it shows us that our tragedies aren't just what stop us, but it's what builds us up into being stronger, into being better, and into being a better hero, into leaving a life of mystery and despair, but a life that's worth living, and a life that helps other lives live as well. And I think that's what's beautiful about Spider-Man. And I just love to end it off there for my part, because I think, yeah, it's just a wonderful character, one of my favorite characters of all time, if not my favorite character of all time. And I can't wait to see more of this character. I'm so hopeful to a degree. I mean, God knows if Brand New Day sucks, I'm gonna be so sad. But if it doesn't, the suit looks great, so I'm not gonna be that mad. So I'm more hopeful when I think about Spider-Man and when I talk about Spider-Man.